Day weekend on C-SPAN 2. If you'd like to watch Book TV, call your local cable operator and say you want C-SPAN 2.
Now we'll look at Serbian news coverage of NATO airstrikes on Yugoslavia from government-controlled Radio Television Serbia in Belgrade. This portion of the news was recorded today at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time and translated here at C-SPAN in Washington, D.C. It's about a half hour.
You're watching primetime news of Radio Television Serbia. Respected viewers, the planners and the executors of the evil deeds against Yugoslavia continue to kill civilians throughout Yugoslavia. Obviously, they want to obstruct the peace initiatives in order to resolve the crisis caused by NATO. In the village of Radosta, west of Orahovec, NATO killed 2 children today. 1 other child was seriously injured. In the village of Gazivode near Zubin Potok, 1 civilian facility was hit. A child and its mother were injured. The target of the NATO killers this morning around 1:30 a.m. was again the Jugopetrol fuel facility in Prahovo. This is the 5th attack of NATO on this fuel storage facility. They shook with 12 missiles the Negotin area. The aggressor NATO alliance, as of 1:20 in the morning, attacked the Bor area several times. For a 4th time, they attacked the Jugopetrol fuel storage facilities on Slatina Road. Afterwards, you could hear the missiles throughout the mining and smelting facility of Bor. Several missiles hit the electric power plant number 3 that was already destroyed by 2 earlier attacks. There are no injured people in these attacks, but there was huge material damage both in residential areas and in economic facilities. The aggressor NATO alliance, 25 minutes after midnight, attacked for a 3rd time the Novi Sad television, already damaged during previous attacks on the 3rd and 15th of May. These facilities were once again targets. 1 missile also exploded close to the riverbank along Danube in a residential area, Liman 3. The anti-aircraft units responded energetically according to eyewitnesses. 1 criminal attack plane was hit and withdrew towards Hungary, obviously damaged. After a hit by our anti-aircraft units at about 1:20 a.m., an enemy plane dropped its fuel reservoir near Aleksandrovac in Žabarska county. 1 reservoir hit the very center of Aleksandrovac, 2 more in the nearby fields. The marks on these reservoirs show that this is a fighter plane, Harrier type, that was damaged and withdrew towards Prahovo. Last night's attack was prevented by our anti-aircraft units that managed to hit 3 cruising missiles of the NATO aggressor. The target of the aggressor were also the suburbs near Kragujevac, the Dobričevo farm near Čuprije, as well as the area of Marković near Kuršumlija. In the afternoon, they also attacked the Kremana area on Tara Mountain. They also attacked civilian targets in Kosovo, in the county of Suva Reka, the wider area of Pristina, economic facilities in Lipljan, and the Goleš Mountain. Also, the area of Ruška Gora, specifically the village of Bešenovo, was a site where they found a reservoir for fuel discarded by an enemy plane, as well as 2 unexploded missiles. Between Kosovska Vitina and Letnica, around 11 a.m., our anti-aircraft units downed an unmanned plane by NATO. From the rubble of the prison facility in Istok, attacked and razed twice by NATO, 86 corpses have been pulled out so far. 196 people are injured, 40 are in very critical condition. The doctors are fighting for their lives. A number of prisoners have fled, noted the judge of the county court in Peć, Mladen Bojic. The investigation in Istok is carried out under very difficult circumstances, not only because of the rubble, but because of the constant presence of NATO planes. NATO Air Force, after 12 a.m., attacked twice the area of Crni Rad. Near Sutomore, on the Adriatic coast of Montenegro, the enemy hit Sutomore area yesterday as well twice. In the zone of the responsibility of the Second Army, despite combat actions, there is a specific attention given for the health and psychological condition of our soldiers. During the visit of our border battalion, We saw the health unit from Podgorica in Montenegro, and they continue to observe our soldiers and conduct epidemiological, neurological, dental, and psychiatric examinations. In war conditions, special attention is given to epidemiological testing of food and potable water. As you can see, this is conducted by expert medical teams. What's common to all these soldiers? Companionship, compactness, an impressive maturity of young people who are only 19, and within the past 2 months they have matured both emotionally and intellectually. With their activities, they give example both to those older than themselves and those younger ones. This is a force that we really are proud of. Aside from small colds, negligible cough or two, there are no serious health problems. In military conditions, it's very important to have medical exams, and these are conducted by the troop doctor Zoran Pejkanovic. Obviously, psychological stability of the soldiers can be affected, and that's why they have a psychologist and psychiatrist on staff. We haven't noticed any disruptions in the psychological condition. At the end of our report from this Yugoslav-Albanian border area, here is the message of one of the soldiers that was conveyed by the captain first class Radovan Bečić. Our army, as you've seen today, is ready and prepared to defend this part of the territory of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. Our ambassador to the UN, Vladislav Jovanovic, repeated the willingness of our country to discuss, of course, with mediation of the UN, about the full autonomy of Kosovo, excluding secession and protectorate over the sovereign country of Yugoslavia. In Moscow, the three-party meetings are underway in order to resolve the situation in Yugoslavia in peaceful means. The participants, Viktor Chernomyrdin, Marty Ahtisaari, and Strobe Talbot, the Deputy Secretary of State of the US, said that the negotiations will last until there is a solution and until there is a chance to find a solution. Before the negotiations, the Finnish president met with the new Prime Minister of Russia, Sergei Stepashin. Russia stressed the need for an immediate end of the bombing of Yugoslavia and beginning of the political process. In Moscow, the third round of negotiations is underway between Viktor Chernomyrdin, the Finnish president Ahtisaari, and Strobe Talbot. Chernomyrdin stresses that the result of today's discussions should be an agreement on the end of the bombardment of Yugoslavia. This is the main condition to switch this military conflict into a political negotiating situation. For the first time, these meetings are attended by U.S. military representatives as well as General Zavashin, the Russia's military representative at NATO. It's not known what was arranged between Viktor Chernomyrdin and Strobe Talbot that held another discussion prior to the beginning of the official negotiations. That discussion lasted for 2 hours. Tomorrow, Chernomyrdin travels to Belgrade to brief President Milosevic on the results from these discussions between Ahtisaari and Talbot. It is important that any resolution of the conflict in Kosovo should involve the Yugoslav party as well. The Russian Foreign Minister Igor Ivanov stated that in Moscow they're not talking about division of Kosovo as some British media have implied. Nobody's preparing for division of Kosovo. These are not discussions about divisions, stressed the Russian Foreign Minister after his meeting with the Deputy Secretary of State Strobe Talbot. He stressed that there are documents which note that the solution of the Kosovo crisis is possible only with protection of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Yugoslavia, so there is no discussion of any division. Strobe Talbot, after the meeting with Ivanov, stressed that Yugoslavia should retain Kosovo within its limits, but at the same time we are trying to reach few objectives. First, to stop this crisis. Second, to return the refugees to Kosovo. In order to accomplish this, we have to understand that there is only one state on the map, Yugoslavia. Italy and Great Britain give full support to the diplomatic initiatives for the solution of the Kosovo crisis. This was the substance of today's meetings between the Italian Foreign Minister Lamberto Dini and his British counterpart Robin Cook. This is the first stage of the tour throughout Europe by Robin Cook, who will also visit France and Germany, and that comes immediately after his visit to the US. During the discussions in Rome, both Dini and Cook expressed support for the negotiation efforts of the special Russian envoy Chernomyrdin, with a special emphasis on his meeting today with the Deputy Secretary of State of the US, Traub Talbot, and the Finnish President Martti Ahtisaari. Secretary General of the UN, Kofi Annan, sent an appeal from Stockholm for finding a political solution for Kosovo in order to stop the suffering of the Yugoslav civilians, as he said, regardless of their nationality. Kofi Annan, in his speech in the Swedish parliament, said that all of the final solutions for Kosovo have to be found within the UN, and the UN Security Council should have a key role. The President of the General Assembly of the UN and head of the Uruguay's diplomacy, Didier Roperti, criticized NATO, accusing it of behaving like an international tutor. He said that one cannot change international order without a discussion within the UN. The presiding member of the UN General Assembly said that this is an attempt to return the clock of history back. We shall enter the next century with UN in a very bad position and an international order that's completely chaotic because the right of force dominates over the rule of law. Leading Chinese media say that the continuation of this aggression will cause ever-growing difficulties within NATO. Washington and other NATO members are trying to conceal the differences within NATO. The agency Xinhua says that during the visit of the German Foreign Minister Fischer to Washington, he insisted on speaking on peace. The Chinese paper China Daily says that NATO will not stay out of the responsibility for these actions in Yugoslavia. Those responsible will have to end up similarly to those at the Nuremberg Tribunal. The paper calls all attempts to justify this war as a peacekeeping operation as a travesty because a sovereign state has been exposed to suffering and great humanitarian disaster. NATO leaders thus avoid calling this aggression a war at all costs, aware that it has no legal grounds. The former prosecutor at the Nuremberg trial, the U.S. lawyer Walter Rockler, stated for the reputable Chicago Daily Tribune that the U.S. and its NATO allies will not be exempted from responsibility for war crimes, having taken part in a flagrant aggression and incessant assault on a small country. The former prosecutor in the trials against German Nazis called upon the Nuremberg Tribunal as the defining principle of international law in order to support his claims that U.S. and its NATO allies cannot avoid accusations for this greatest evil after Second World War. A group of 25 congressmen in the U.S. sent an appeal to the U.S. Attorney General asking for speeding up of the indictment procedure against Clinton in order to stop this illegal war that he is leading against Yugoslavia without an approval by the U.S. Congress. This appeal, published on Tuesday, was signed by 21 Republican congressmen and 4 Democrats. The indictment against Clinton has been served to the court already since the 13th of April. It was submitted by the California Congressman Tom Campbell with the support of 16 more congressional leaders. He did this after an action that was initiated in the Congress and was concluded with a controversial decision. Campbell demanded that Congress either declare a formal war against Yugoslavia or that Clinton withdraw the forces from Yugoslavia. The Congress refused to declare war, but they also did not decide anything on whether Clinton should withdraw the troops. Campbell then accused Clinton, calling upon the Constitution of the U.S. and the law on military forces from 1973, according to which the President of the U.S. cannot engage U.S. forces in combat operations outside longer than 60 days without an express approval from the U.S. Congress. Those 60 days are over. Clinton has not asked for approval, and the American bombs continue to fall on Yugoslavia. We are at war with Yugoslavia, says Campbell. Only idiots can claim otherwise. From the White House, the response to this indictment and the appeal was said that the administration believes that, technically speaking, U.S. is not engaged in war against Yugoslavia. What's happening in the Balkans is a limited military action. However, a day earlier, Clinton himself denied, in a sense, such claims in an article in the New York Times under the title "A Just and Necessary War." Campbell and a group of congressmen are asking the court to give their opinion. Aside from the 25 congressmen that support this indictment, they're talking about even a wider support in the Congress. We are only asking for the law to be abided. Clinton has to either ask the Congress for approval or stop this war. Washington analysts, as reported by the CNN, say that the public support of the air raids on Yugoslavia, which hovered about 61% around April 13, has dropped to 49% by May 23rd or 24th. 47% of Americans directly opposed the attacks on Yugoslavia. Also falling is the confidence that Clinton can successfully resolve the Kosovo crisis. Now it is at its lowest level in the past 2 years. 82% of the Americans believe that these attacks should stop and negotiations should begin. The Greek condemnation of the aggression on Yugoslavia is confirmed by the results of the latest opinion poll. According to it, 99.5% of Athenians, and this is about half of all Greeks, believe that there is no justification for the criminal behavior of the NATO alliance. It was also shown that almost equal number of Greeks condemned the plans for ground troops, and close to 70% believe that Clinton should be judged as a war criminal. Majority of Greeks believe that this is an attempt on part of America to establish its power in the Balkans. The latest research of the Bulgarian Institute for Statistics shows that 70% of citizens oppose the bombing of Yugoslavia. The president of the Bulgarian Communists, Aleksandar Paunov, stated that communist parties of several European countries will organize on the 2nd of June protest against the aggression on Yugoslavia, asking for immediate end. The Bulgarian proposal was accepted by 55 communist parties of Europe at an Athens meeting. All protests will take place in capitals of Europe, but also in the USA and Canada. Ibrahim Rugova, the leader of the Democratic Alliance of Kosovo, was in Macedonia to visit the refugee camp Stenkovec and the border area Blace. He noted that the refugees in Macedonia want to go back to Kosovo. He also met with the delegates of the Party for the Democratic Prosperity, an opposition party representing the Albanians of Macedonia. He did not have a meeting with the Democratic Party of the Albanians, a coalition partner in the Macedonian government, whose leader has close ties with Hashim Tači, one of the terrorist leaders and president of the self-appointed Kosovo government. In Moscow, the assistant to the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Joran Petersen, stated that the bombing of Yugoslavia has to stop immediately because it has caused a humanitarian disaster. Petersen said that Russia should play a key role in the solution of the Balkan crisis and called Russia to send a delegation to Geneva next week for a meeting that will consider the way out of the crisis caused by NATO. In Belgrade, at today's meeting of the regional and city-level secretaries of the Socialist Party of Serbia, presided over by Gorica Gajevic, it was concluded that Serbia and Yugoslavia, all of the citizens and the people at large, the leadership, they are all determined to defend the country against the aggression. The beastly destruction of economic and infrastructural facilities, power plants, hospitals, schools, is an expression of the fury of the NATO criminals because of the failure of their aggression. By bombing our radio and TV stations and demanding an end of our satellite transmission, they confirm that they are afraid of the truth. They want to hide from the international public their responsibility against these crimes against humanity. The Socialist Party of Serbia, from the standpoint of our permanent determination for peace, says that the problems in Kosovo can be solved only by peaceful means, with full support for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Yugoslavia and equality of all our ethnic groups. The condition for this is to stop the bombardment and continue the political dialogue within the framework of the UN Charter. Only this approach can lead to a permanent solution, stop the suffering of the civilians, bring the refugees back home, and express more strongly the mutual confidence in the Balkans and Europe. The insistence on force and continuation of the aggression and this evil bombardment doesn't contribute to this solution, only increases the suffering of our people. As to the yesterday's statement by Madeleine Albright on the anti-war protests in Aleksandrovac and Kruševac, we stress that all of Yugoslavia is an anti-war protest. At our squares, bridges, all of our people express their protest to the aggression and determination nation to defend their country. Yugoslavia defends itself against an aggression. Only crooks and traitors such as Djindjic and Đukanović and foreign mercenaries stand against the defense of our country. The Serbian Radical Party stresses that the beastly bombardment of Yugoslavia by the Nazi alliance of NATO that inflict ever greater civilian damages confirms without doubt that the criminals failed in their plan designed by the hotheads in Washington led by Clinton, their expectation to destroy our people after a brief war, the last bastion of freedom and independence before U.S. imperialism in Europe, has failed. Serbian radicals esteem the Yugoslav army and police for their courage, patriotism, and their fight against the NATO aggressor, who used all of their powers to reach one sole goal: to occupy our fatherland and destroy the Serbian people. The infantile NATO brains have to understand that our people will never accept occupation of land that has always been Serbian. Our defense of freedom, dignity, and honor will not stoop before even the most monstrous enemy arms. The main board of the Yugoslav Army reservists stated that our reserve officers give an exceptional contribution to the defense of the country against this evil aggression and the attacks on our territory and sovereignty. The board recognized all reserve officers who, as heads of units and in all other capacities, carry out their combat duties selflessly and in an exemplary fashion. With this engagement, our reserve officers of Serbia and Montenegro contribute to the integration and cohesion of our people and the unity of the defenders of Yugoslavia. This was the very basis of our organization of military reserve officers as an organization vital to the defense. At the session in Plevlja, the board adopted a decree on the functioning of this organization in war times, called upon all its members to invest all of their energy in reaching that goal. In Belgrade, the Foreign Minister Živadin Jovanović received the Undersecretary of the UN for Humanitarian Issues, Sergio De Mello. De Mello is heading an interagency mission of the UN that came to our country to investigate the consequences of the NATO aggression. The discussion stressed that this two-month-long aggression, which represents a violation of the key principles of the UN Charter and international law, has caused a humanitarian disaster, many civilian casualties, and huge material destruction. It was stressed that the UN, and especially the Security Council, as a body tasked with protection of international peace and security, should take strong measures to end the aggression and create political peace in Kosovo, as well as eliminate the humanitarian crisis as it is actively pursued by the governments of Yugoslavia and Serbia. Also stressed was the need of active participation of Yugoslavia in all UN and UN Security Council initiatives until a solution is found that will respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Yugoslavia. The discussion supported the full willingness of Yugoslavia to cooperate with the UN and international humanitarian organizations and agencies that would take part in alleviating the consequences of NATO aggression. Foreign Minister Živadin Jovanović reiterated his invitation for the UN Secretary General Kofi Annan to visit Yugoslavia. The Undersecretary De Mello, in conclusion of this 11-day visit, expressed satisfaction with the organization of the visit, the open and constructive dialogue with the Yugoslav counterparts, and with the willingness of Yugoslavia to work with the UN and its specialized agencies. Sergio Vieira de Mello thanked the Yugoslav government for allowing his delegation to see, even in the heat of the bombing campaign, the consequences of this destruction. He stressed that the experts in his mission managed to gain good perspective on the humanitarian situation in Yugoslavia and the scope of the destruction caused by the bombing, which will be reported soon to the UN Secretary General Kofi Annan with a draft proposal. According to De Mello, the degree of damage to the public property and infrastructure causes serious concern. That's why he will propose specific measures for alleviating the consequences before the winter. His Yugoslav counterparts expressed hope that this report on the destruction of an old sovereign European country will be objective and it will not be used by the people of the 19 richest countries in the world to justify a further genocide over the innocent Yugoslav people. The Minister of Health and Social Policy, Miodrag Kovac, stressed that NATO's recent attacks on the energy plants, water plants, has endangered all of the Yugoslavs by polluting their country, their land, their water, leaving them without electricity. The Minister of Humanitarian Issues and Displaced People, Bratislava Morina, stressed that the first real humanitarian assistance to our country will be the end of terrorism and the bombing, which causes so many civilian damages and casualties day and night. Only then can we begin traditional humanitarian activities, that is, the healing of the country. The Minister for Infrastructure, Dejan Robnjakovic, and the Minister for Science and Technology, Branislav Ivkovic, presented data on the scope of the damage and the time and efforts needed to reconstruct the destroyed economic facilities and public utilities of our country. The Minister of Justice, Zoran Knežević, and the Minister for Minority Rights in the government of Serbia, Ivan Sedrak, briefed today a high official for human rights from the UN, Barbara Davis, on the human and minority rights in Yugoslavia. Minister Knežević stressed that the aggression of NATO on a sovereign country such as Yugoslavia is a blatant example of a violation of the UN Charter, which was the basis for the international peace, security and human rights in the world. The Minister for Development, Science and Environment, Jagor Zelenović, presented the guests with a report on the ecological situation in Yugoslavia in '98 and the environmental consequences of the NATO aggression. The Minister of Agriculture, Nedoljko Šipovac, gave detailed report to the UN officials on the huge damage to the Yugoslav agriculture and food processing industry. Sergio de Mello was also received today by Borislav Mikelic, President of the Committee for Displaced Persons of Serbia, who spoke about the key problems of over 400,000 Serbs expelled from Krajina in Croatia, whose situation has dramatically deteriorated as a result of the NATO aggression. Mikelic reminded de Mello of the events of '95, when Croatia expelled 260,000 Serbs in front of the eyes of the UN from Krajina. Croatia has never suffered any consequences for this crime. 4 years have gone by and the UN have not made a single decisive move, such as a UN resolution that would oblige Croatia to accept these refugees back and restitute their property. These days, as Mikelic added, UN Secretary General Kofi Annan and the highest NATO officials visit with pomp the Kosovo refugees in Albania and Macedonia, as if they were attending a soccer game, and promised them an immediate return home. It would be good if the Krajina Serbs had the same treatment, said Mikelic, stressing the double standards of the international community regarding refugees, this time again at the expense of the Serbian people. The Minister for Serbs in Diaspora, Milorad Mirčić, received representatives of the Serbian people from Macedonia. Those are among the first to initiate a wave of protests against the NATO aggression on sovereign Yugoslavia. They deceived themselves, those who thought that the first bombs will bring an end, that they will destroy our unity and cause political upheaval. They miscalculated also, thinking that the people in Macedonia will not dare to raise their voice against the NATO troops stationed on their territory, said Mirčić. The delegation of Serbs from Macedonia said that according to reliable information, 2,000 soldiers from the NATO contingent in Macedonia have deserted. 9 political parties have asked for a referendum in which Macedonians can express their views on NATO presence in their country, as well as that the anti-NATO protests in Macedonia gathered up to 500,000 citizens. The protests in Macedonia will not end until this mad bombardment ends, until NATO withdraws from Macedonia, because Macedonians do not support the presence of NATO allowed by the blackmailed government. The Cuban ambassador to Yugoslavia, Omer Medina, stressed in an interview that despite the daily dangers for everyone, including diplomats in Yugoslavia, Cubans feel honored to be in a country that stood up in the defense of its freedom. This is also likely the reason why 95.5% of Athenians, half of the Greek population, believe that there is no justification for the criminal NATO alliance behavior in Yugoslavia. A little further from our eyes, Portugal was the site of several protest meetings in Lisbon. They were led by the mayor, João Soares, asking for an immediate end of the bombardment. There were also protests in Vienna, Stuttgart, London, Bratislava, Vancouver, and other cities around the world. Through the center of Lisbon passed a protest march attended by Yugoslavs as well. They asked for an immediate end of the aggression, return of the Portuguese soldiers, and seeking a political solution based on the UN Charter. The participants began their gathering at one of the central Lisbon squares, and from there, with loud slogans, they walked towards the palace of the Prime Minister. They were very vocal in their calls: yes for peace, not for war, Clinton fascists, NATO fascists out of the Balkans. From the improvised podium, Sandra Benfico spoke. She's representative for peace and cooperation. She said that no excuses can justify NATO's violation of the UN Charter and international law, as well as the Charter of the Atlantic Council. The leader of the unions condemned the aggression, stressing that we are witnesses of destruction of a country and people.
For more about the military action in Yugoslavia, you can click onto our website, where you can watch the daily Serbian newscast and other events, including briefings from the Pentagon and State Department. Our web address is cspan.org.